Sounds like Europe. Cross-border podcasting.
Hello and welcome to Sounds Like Europe, Cross-Border Podcasting, a project brought to you by WePod. I am your host, Javi Caminero. In this podcast, we have talked on several occasions about how podcasting in Europe is growing, what we can do to make it progress, how it can end up becoming mainstream in large markets. We are in a context of changes in Europe that more or less directly affect podcasting. Disinformation, fake news, censorship, as is happening in Hungary, for example. In this episode, I wanted to reflect on the place of podcasting in the future of journalism. How will our sector evolve according to the changes in journalism, and what will the role of podcasting be like in the coming few years? The University of Roma III, which is WePod's academic partner, has published a book that addresses all these issues called Podcasts in the Future of Journalism. To find out more about this book, today I'm going to talk to Marta Perrotta, professor and investigator at the University of Roma III. Ciao Marta, how are you?
Ciao Javi, I'm very good, thank you.
This book consists of 11 essays written by professionals from different fields of the audio world. But before we get into the content of the book itself, I wanted you to tell me what the process was like. How was it to create and to edit this book, which is what you have done?
Oh yes, actually the book was conceived during the first phase of WePod. So before we won the grant and before imagining all the things that we have done, we decided to reflect with academics and professionals on podcast journalism. So actually we launched the call for chapters, for research chapters, and it was very interesting to see how all the things that are in the book reflect the actual path of the co-productions that we have been producing and also observing. So we want this book to support the broader research project around WePod, and we think it's very important for professionals and academics to meet, to reflect together, and to give different perspective to these thoughts.
An important point for podcasting, if everything continues to become more and more professional along the years, will be regulation. What industries will we have to look at in Europe in order to do well and to have a proper and strong regulation?
Actually, in the book, you have a lot of observation about that. We selected two chapters that deal with algorithms and regulations that are critical blind spots for the development of podcast journalism. And podcasting's growing reliance on platforms and recommendation algorithms introduce opaque and regulated systems that shape discovery and audience behavior besides production. So we have two contributions about that. We have Raffaele Torino, who is a professor at Roma III, and Carl Hartley, a colleague from UK, that bring attention to AI bias, platform powers, and the lack of public accountability in podcast distribution. This is something that there are issues that journalism scholars often overlook. So I think this is very, very interesting for this reason.
Something vital for podcasting as well is being able to create and maintain an audience, obviously. But regarding what you have learned during this process and editing this book, what are the differences in this regard, in terms of audience, between narrative podcasts and conversational podcasts? Are there many differences as of today?
Actually, we probably focused on more on conversational than narrative ones in this book, but I think that what the format of podcast affords is the audience co-creation. It's something that is it's wider than the look at the different formats. We have a case study on a podcast called Death in Ice Valley, that shows how journalistic storytelling can evolve into collaborative investigation between journalists and the audience. And this is something really, really interesting in terms of engagement for the listeners. And also, of course, this is something more probably more studied than the first thing I said, like the emotional resonance that the audience have with the investigations and also with the conversation on very sensitive topic. We have a very interesting contribution also on how podcasts facilitate the community building around sensitive topics, not only through emotion, but also through the building of trust between journalists and the audiences. And this is something that can give a very strong support to the future of journalism and the need for journalism for our society.
A few days ago, regarding this topic of conversational and narrative projects, I was reading, because Ana Ribera actually recommended it to me, one of the latest issues of The Audio Insurgent, which is a newsletter by Eric Newsom. And he was talking about how maybe it was time to create two different concepts within the concept of podcasting. He was talking about a neurogenesis, and he was telling about dividing the term podcast into storycast, which would be a documentary, or the work we have usually been doing here at WePod, and a chatcast, which will be, Sounds Like Europe, or one of those other shows you mentioned that help also to build a community. Going into the future, as is what you have been studying with this publication, how did you choose the topics that you felt were differential when talking about the future?
Actually, the call was very open. So we really wanted the scholars to propose their best case studies to answer the question of what is the future of podcast journalism. So we had a lot of entries to the call, and we finally decided to give space for 10 or 11 in the end chapters. I think that we are building more awareness of of some definition for the study of podcasts in terms of listening, for instance, patterns, which is something that the book is very focused on. We have Mia Lindgren and Gabriela Perdomo, who map out podcast journalism's core elements and introduce the idea of reflexive, deep listening by listening to both ways of podcasting you were mentioning, both the storycast and the chatcast, because actually when you make tags, you have to be sure that the next 2 years, 3 years will bring you hybrids of these two tags, and it's something that is in the process of creating genres. Actually, we have seen it from the history of literature and art and music. Every time you try to map the genres or the formats, you have to deal with creators and writers that want to blend the categories. So I think it's very hard to have a preview of the future in these terms. Every chapter has a focus on dilemmas for producers, dilemmas for regulators, for journalists, for creators of music. For instance, the chapter of Andrea Recesco and Sabrina Tinelli for Cora Media focus on story ethics and narrative responsibility in journalism. This is something that in the history of podcasting has been often addressed by researchers, by academics, but I think when you deal with such a big co-production ecosystem as WePod has been, it's very interesting to see how in a cross-country production model, these dilemmas become really, really wide, really, really big. And it's very important to have big communities of producers and also listeners to reflect upon this. I think this book can give a lot of useful insights for our listeners.
Yeah, I think this book was pretty much needed because, as you said, these kind of topics have largely been addressed here in there are very popular articles here in Spain. I'm sure there also will be in Italy, in France, addressing these topics, but maybe this is the first time it has been addressed in a common community way here in Europe, just to focus on what we can do to improve and to create a common industry, which I believe until this publication, until this series of co-productions we have been doing for almost 2 years now, wasn't something that was on the table so much. So I believe that the book was pretty much needed, as I was telling you. And you have been coordinating it. You have been editing these 11 chapters. I'm sure creators telling you what they wanted to publish, how and when. I'm sure, as I have been one of them also, people asking you when is it going to come out. So what are your main lessons and your main takeaways for the future after coordinating this publication of podcasts in the future of journalism?
Oh, actually, I must admit that looking at this book, I cannot say that European podcasting has become a more clearer space for me, because as soon as I read the details of different productions and of different case histories, I think that we have a very fragmented situation by language regulation and market structures. But this diversity, and this is the main insight I bring with me after this editing work, is also a rich ground for experimentation. And
sure.
I really want this book to push for a greater infrastructure, training and support for cross-border podcast journalism that reflects our cultural plurality. This is something unique. It's really unique. And also we had a lot of contribution from UK, also providing an insight on Brexit podcast, which is something I didn't knew about. Actually, I learned a lot from this chapter about Brexitcast and Remaincast. So two counter narratives to politics, which is something journalism has to do, but also two emotional outlets and cultural commentary spaces during the Brexit crisis. So after this book, you will have to listen to a lot of podcasts that you probably have missed in the last 5-10 years. And journalism models need updating. So maybe also editing of books need updating after this. I would like to work more on the review processes that can be different from exchanging mails and drafts. Maybe the live discussion that we can have through podcasts is much more engaging. But yeah, it was a great and hard work. I must mention also Nicholas Bilki, that was very involved in this process, and I really need you to read it, Javi, and to tell me what you think about that.
It's important, as you said, for the discussion to be alive, right? For us to be exchanging how we feel about podcasting here and there, and how we can evolve what is different from each industry within this same bigger industry, which is the European one. It's definitely a tough task and a difficult industry to develop, but as you said, maybe a fragmented one. But I believe that the first step, you can confirm it or deny it, is to sit down with these professionals who have published on the book to define some concepts, as you were saying before. And I believe that's the first step into keeping the improvement of the podcasting industry alive, as well as the discussion and the growth as well as we need here in WePod, and is what we have tried to accomplish during these almost 2 years. In these almost 2 years as well, in Roma III, you have also been observing everything we do in WePod. You are going to publish a book about the project. You have been researching. You are preparing a report. So, what can you tell us about this other publication? When will it come out, if you can say the date, and what will it be about, and what have you learned observing the WePod project?
We have to publish a white paper for cross-border podcast co-productions, which is something that is more addressed to European and national legislators, as well as companies, distributors, creators, so all the stakeholders, all the actors of the market. And it's not just the insight of our research, actually, because we, in Roma III, we did a long research on production routines of cross-border podcast co-production. So this is one part with the main takeaways. So we want to actually, with these main research findings, we want to give recommendations to producers and to regulators as well, to sustain the business of co-production, and also to give practical tips in order to make the co-production easier for the future. And this will come out at the end of WePod, so in the month of August, actually, on our website, of course. And I think this kind of recommendation can have a great impact on the smaller companies and the smaller stakeholders, because podcast creation has a lot of administrative tasks to license content, and the smaller the players are, the harder this is, because it's a matter of power and also of capacity of being seen by the market. So it's something that together with all the tools that are on our platform can and should have give more visibility to the work that WePod is trying to do. So the research was very interesting. It's not ended yet, because the main co-production is coming out now. So we have to see how the final steps of the production are going. But all the main ideas on the sharing of creativity process are already done, and it's really, really interesting to see how it was. The main concept I could highlight is the fact that we actually need to know each other very well.
Yes.
So
I think the main takeaway maybe is that
community building.
And actually that's what I was going to say, that the main takeaway could be that we managed to make it work. And I think maybe from the outside it can be a very simple takeaway, but a lot of countries, a lot of companies involved, a lot of projects and different ways of approaching the content.
Of human beings.
Yeah, we made it work, and maybe
it's not just about the organization.
Yeah.
It's not just about the management. It's not just about technology, because the key words are empathy, intimacy, creativity, and community for my side. I think that these words make podcasting a human medium, and it's something that you have to keep in mind while co-producing podcasts.
Yeah, totally agree. And about that large co-production, actually, that you mentioned it before, which will be like the main event of the WePod project, right? We have been waiting for it for almost 2 years. It will be coming out in the next few days, and we will make a special episode here in Sounds Like Europe with the creators of that large co-production. So stay tuned to listen to it. And Marta, before we end this episode, I would like to ask you a couple of questions, which is the classic Sounds Like Europe questions I ask to every guest here about your listening habits. I don't know if you came prepared for these ones, but what's your favorite podcast right now?
Oh, it's named Soli, Alone, and it's a story, actually, a storycast about the kids that were born in the Osho communities in the 70s and in the 80s in India, in Pune. So it's a deep dive investigation into the lives after many years of people that was born or has been living in their childhood in the Osho communities, sannyasi communities. So it's I don't know why I came across this. Maybe it was because it's not recent, actually. It has been out since 2 years. But I really love it.
It's Italian, right?
It's Italian, yes. Soli means alone.
And the first time you were here in Sounds Like Europe, which was, I think, around April, more or less, last year, I asked you when was your favorite moment to listen to podcasts. You said that it was commuting, like when you were going to work or on your way home. Has it changed at all? Is there any new habit in your listening of podcasts?
It changed a little bit because I'm not sleeping well in this lately. So I think I've been starting listening to podcasts also at night.
Okay, that's dangerous, but I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really dangerous. But instead of being scrolling on the smartphone or I cannot read at night because sometimes my kid is with me, so I don't want to have a light on. But listening is. But I think I'm actually with this last podcast I'm listening to. I'm making him listen a lot of strange histories. So I don't know if it's good or not.
Yeah, he had to begin at some point.
I added the night. Yeah.
Marta Perrotta, professor and investigator at the University of Roma III. Thank you for being here and for your fantastic work trying to define the future of podcasting, which we know isn't easy. But as I said and we were saying before, I think we could proudly affirm that we made it work.
Oh, yes, definitely. Thank you, Javi. Thank you very much.
And to everyone listening to this interview, I've been your host, Javi Caminero. Thank you for being here, and I will be back in 2 weeks with a new episode of Sounds Like Europe. Bye-bye.
Sounds Like Europe, Cross-Border Podcasting is a WePod podcast funded by the Creative Europe programme. Hosted and written by Javi Caminero, sound design by Manu Tomillo, coordinator Alexander Damiano Ricci, executive producer Anna Ribera.